Welcome to the Combustion Chronicles podcast, where bold leaders combined with big ideas to create game-changing disruption. I'm Shawn Nason, your host for navigating the upside-down world of disruption. We're excited to depart from our usual programming for a few weeks to present a special mini-series based on my new book, Kiss Your Dragons, Radical Relationships, Bold Heartsets, and Changing the World. Throughout these mini episodes, I'm joined by my co-authors, Glasco and Michael Harper. Together, we'll be digging into the heartsets and mindsets featured in the book and getting real about our personal journeys that led us to launch all of this into the world. Like it or not, you've got some dragons in your life that need kissing. So pucker up and let's have some explosive conversations. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about radical relationships. And Michael and Robin, we defined radical relationships in the beginning of the book as radical relationships are about depth and authenticity, boldness and heart, but more importantly, they're about being willing to be in relationships with people and systems that are very different from where you are and embracing the mess that comes with it. So I would love for us to share about our radical relationships, because most of the viewers on here won't know that you have three very extreme different views, and on all ends of the spectrum. So Michael, tell me a little bit about your take on radical relationships.
Radical relationships and my life, I have got to say, I'm the one in the threesome here that radical relationships are the hardest part. I am uncomfortable with radical relationships, and I am not afraid to say it. And I will say that being a part of writing this book gave me permission not to say it.
Yeah.
Because that was a big moment for everybody out there who is a little bit confused about radical relationships, or people who are not really ready to dive in head first like some of us have. I'm with you. You're my people. You're my people. So for me, on the side of radical relationships, when it doesn't feel natural, what it is an opportunity to put yourself out there, to be vulnerable with the things that make you uncomfortable, and then over time, be ready to learn and to grow and to imagine opportunities that you just never knew existed beforehand. That's probably the clearest way I can say that, is that it's not always fun, it's not always easy, but in the end, I'm thankful for being able to do it.
And I just gotta call bullshit.
Why?
And we are in a church. I have to call BS. No, because every time we're in a room, you're the first to scan and call out there's way too many white people here.
Absolutely.
You're the first to call out that there is too much of something.
Yep.
And so from a radical perspective, making sure there's diversity in the room, not just of the obvious, but pushing to get to a different place, a different idea, that's what I call bullshit. Because for me, it's less about the stuff that you tell him he can't do. I'll let you say that. But more so around surfacing the difference. Because if you are just rolling around with people that are bobbleheading with you all the time, you're going to get to the same place. We've seen it again and again and again. If you want to get to a different place, you got to bring in different experiences that typically come with people who don't look like you, that from up and down, look like you, don't think like you, don't act like you, have different experiences than you, and you always call that out. So that's why I call bullshit.
I do, but I have zero patience for anyone who can't call it out like I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think that's a big thing. And continuing on what we wrote in the book, it says this is about taking the time to sit with people you don't usually sit with. Mm-hmm. This is also about sitting in the mess even when every ounce of your being wants to run and hide. And I think that is where Michael calls it out, mm-hmm. But when it gets in the mess, that run and hide is what he's sharing with, and it says, done well, what radical relationships are in living. They give us confidence and energy in the face of ambiguity, confusion, difficulty, danger, and even despair. They build our trust in ourselves and in others, and we need them now more than ever. And I really want to talk about that because we also talked about up here, and may get a little uncomfortable for some people, but we talked about radical relationships as people and systems. And I think here's where I would call this with you, Michael, and we're not trying to pick on Michael, but just this great conversation. Michael, you are really good at radical systems. You understand both sides of all systems, and for the listeners that are listening to this, we have 3 different political aspects here at the table, right? And so you are all about radical systems, where that's probably more of a challenge for me sometimes, but I'm more around radical relationships, right? But how do we, and then you sit in this, you're this brilliance in the middle of us, Robin, that we live in a society today that can't even embrace radical relationships or radical systems.
Right.
Like if we want to call bullshit, right?
Right.
That's what we're going to call it on, right? And I think that's what's so powerful about us sitting at this table together, is we have given permission to call bullshit on each other.
Oh, yeah. And that's not easy to do, and that's usually not the kind thing to do, the polite thing to do. And you're not being real if you can't say, bullshit. And I know for me, whenever I'm around folks and they say, I want to push on that, I'm like, yes, bring it. I love it, because you'll get to somewhere better. And that's the, part of this radical relationship is that I think what gets in the way is a lot of people are focused on the destination and not necessarily the journey. And that journey it's messy. That journey is, you're focusing, you're flaring, you're debating, you're calling bullshit on one another. But if you're focused on, it has to be here, we have to go here, you're going to continue to be frustrated, rather than sit in it and let the conversation and let the experience evolve to wherever it needs to go.
Yeah, and we also talk about this as about more show, don't tell, right? Which goes back to the mindsets. Not that we've taught, that you actually taught me, mindsets around show, don't tell, and the way to put it. And I think that's the powerful thing here with what has happened and why we wrote this book is we can actually do this. And as we're looking to lean into this more as we talk about it, and what would be the one piece of advice that each of you would give on how to embrace the mess and how to really nurture radical relationships? Because as we wrote in the book, it seems to be more natural for me. I just do it. And Michael tells me, we get on this, that we wrote in here, no more best friends, Shawn. Right? We just can't do any more of this. But what's the one piece of advice that each of you would give to the listeners and to anyone that says, here's how to lean into radical relationships?
You want me to go first?
You go.
So one piece of advice, I would start with the question that you have to ask yourself in the mirror. Are you happy where things are right now? If your answer is no, then that means you must do something different. In order to do something different, you have to take a different path or a different step than what you might have historically done. And actively seeking out someone who doesn't look, think, act like you is a really good step. And that person, someone that you can trust to be honest with you. I'm not saying this has to be your best friend, but you can trust to be honest with you is a very, I think is a very important first step to that path, that journey of getting to a different place.
That's good advice.
I love it.
Yeah. I think mine is that you've got to figure out what you don't know. I'm so tired of hearing people talk about, oh yeah, radical relationships, I have those, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
Because 90% of the time, because I don't want to make assumptions about everybody, but almost every single time someone has said to me, oh, no, I already have radical relationships. You don't. You really don't. So just because you're social and you have friends and you like to share your feelings and you feel like you can go deep, that's not a radical relationship. Because chances are you're doing it with somebody who is very much like you.
Right.
If you want to do all that plus some with people that you completely disagree with, we're getting closer to have a radical relationship. And then...
And I love you said that. Closer.
Closer.
It's still not there.
No, it's not there. It's not there. And it's like anything, you've got to put the work into it. And so even for you, Shawn, when you say it comes naturally to you, sure, but it still takes work. And there are still times where we have to have conversations about, you just think you're being radical there, you're really not. You're taking the easy way out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and it's, I love that because there's something in your gut, or when you get that uncomfortableness, that means, okay, you might be stepping into a little something. You might be getting a little bit more radical. If someone's calling you on your shit, someone's holding that mirror up to you, you might be, and you're feeling that uncomfortableness. That is, I think, when you are on the path.
And I think also a big thing around radical relationships is you also, and this would be my point of advice, you also have to be willing to be hurt.
Ooh, say that louder for the people in the back.
Right?
Did y'all hear that in the back pew?
Like, you have to be willing to be hurt. And I can share personally, in the last 3 months, in a couple situations with people that I felt I had radical relationships with, that I have been deeply hurt. And that's where it's been really difficult to embrace that mess, because when it does feel natural, then when you get into that place, you're like, shit, I don't want to feel this way. And is it worth it? Is it worth it still doing this? Because I'm going to get hurt. And I think that is embracing the mess.
And let me reframe that with, you're highly emotional. I'm highly not emotional. Robin can make it happen, right? Yeah. So as a person who's a more thinking person, hurt is relative. And my feelings don't get hurt in the same way.
Oh, yeah.
But they do get hurt.
Yeah.
And I do process it differently. And I think a lot of people out there, if they're looking at this thinking, okay, this radical relationship is just another touchy-feely thing, and that's part of my call-out, that's not what this is about.
No.
This is about processing how we are built to process and getting to a place and acknowledging a side of ourselves that makes us uncomfortable.
Well, and I do want to totally dive in this.
People who are radically different than we are.
Because you just gave me this light bulb moment, Michael, for you to be able to explain to people, because again, you're not emotional. You know, when I get hurt like that, I have to go through a lot. But I remember a journey embracing the mess with a system, a radical system that you were very tied to for much of your life, that it took you 2 years to walk through that journey. Because you were in a radical system and a radical relationship with that system. That was not an easy, and I remember watching you walk through it, and I remember the day, and I think you share a little bit in the book, but when you leaned in, can you just share just a tad bit? Because I think that's powerful, that people have to understand that it's not just people, but it's a system.
And it's a journey. And so for me, it's the story in the book about being in Puerto Rico when I was resisting. I had every excuse why I shouldn't do this, why I shouldn't jump in and take this risk, because I am risk averse. And everything cleared up to the point that I just had this moment of clarity of it's time to take a risk and it's time to do it. And I think my closing bit for this is that risk, as scary as it is, and whatever risk means to you, because it means different things to different people, it's absolutely worth it if you've got the right radical relationships around you.
Right.
I love it. Well, thanks, you guys. This is awesome, radical relationships.
Bring them.
Thanks so much for listening to this special presentation of the Combustion Chronicles, featuring the lessons and stories behind our new book, Kiss Your Dragons, Radical Relationships, Bold Heart Sets, and Changing the World, which is available now at Amazon. If you'd like to bring Kiss Your Dragons into your life or workplace, head to ShawnNason.com, where you can check out our resource kit for teens, a free book club discussion guide, and information about self-paced and in-person training. If you're ready to dive deeper with us, you can also learn more about our mastermind group and personal coaching. And don't forget to connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Clubhouse so we can continue the conversation about radical relationships, challenging the status quo, and being the people the world needs us to be. Thanks for joining us. Now get out there and kiss some dragons.